Good afternoon. I'm Carl Garth, and welcome to the Champion Chat with Counsellor Alison Champion. Good afternoon, Alison. How are you today?
Hi, Carl. I'm fantastic. Happy to be here as always. And it's great to be warm.
Isn't it just? Yes, absolutely. Might be time to find an outdoor pool.
Yep. Yeah.
Ooh, no.
Well, in today's episode, we're going to look at the Banyule 2041 community vision and recap where we are on that road to 2041, the journey so far. And joining Alison for this week's chat, we have Counsellor Tom Melican. How are you today, Tom?
I'm very good, thank you, Carl. How are you?
Not too bad. I mean, hey, as Alison said, beautiful day, 35 degrees, and I'm still looking for that outdoor pool.
We know a really good indoor pool.
I know a great indoor pool, but hey, I'm a white boy. I need some sun.
Well, I was just down there previously to the opening of that immersion therapy. That was fantastic. Had a look at the equipment. That was good.
They're amazing, isn't it?
Yes.
What is the immersion therapy?
It's for people who have a disability and that they basically have special scuba gear and they set them all up in the scuba gear, lower them into the pool, and it depends on their ability or what they can do. But they're submerged in water and they have certain things they can do. And as one woman said, that her big thing when she gets in down there in the immersion therapy is that she can actually jump. Whereas when she's out of the water, she can barely lift her heels off the ground because of the issues she has with her legs. But in the pool, she can actually jump in the air.
Fantastic.
Jump off the pool. And how much it makes her feel so much better, the fact. And her physios, the chiros are saying how her ankle and movement is improved and the hip alignment so much better because you can actually move freely in the water. And that's what the whole idea is, that so you can move freely, so then your body just improves because you're moving properly. And they have things for people with little, like they call it the James Bond car. So it's a little car they can sit in and they can zoom through the water and shoot things out. And they shoot out rings and then you got to try and steer through the ring and all this sort of stuff.
And is this based down at Watermark, is it?
It's been run by Immersion Therapy, who is an Adelaide company, who just started. They've got a facility in Adelaide because that's where the person that started lives. And they've done a deal with Belgravia, who run Watermark, and Watermark was the one they chose as the first other one outside Adelaide. So, and it's been going really well. Had some of the people that have been trying it, and it was very, very positive, and they're saying what a wonderful facility Watermark was. So, yeah, it was very good.
It's a really amazing concept, and using equipment, obviously, it just allows, as Tom says, it allows people who can't move as well on land in air to move a lot more freely, and that then encourages all the chemical reactions in the body, everything that the body is meant to do for those of us who are able-bodied. It allows for these people to help their bodies move and function better, and that then allows for better mental health and being well.
Okay. One of the participants talked about he's in his wheelchair all the day. The moment he gets out of bed to the moment he goes back to bed, he's in his wheelchair, and how that compresses his spine. Whereas in this therapy, he feels like his spine expands, and it's the only time his spine's not under that pressure of sitting down.
Brilliant.
And the difference that makes to how he feels and how he moves. He said it was amazing. So yeah, it was good.
Yeah. And so it also allows for muscle development. So we sit down and there are muscles that stop moving and stop contracting. They just stop. They do nothing. So if we're sitting down a lot more than moving, then those muscles deteriorate. So this, just hearing about this person sitting down, well, how many of us sit down a lot? Let alone in a whether a wheelchair or not, doesn't matter. We're sitting down, the body still functions or doesn't function in the same way. So this immersion therapy, whereas you and I can get up and walk around and go for a run and do our exercises, etc. But for these people who are in a wheelchair, for example, this is a possibility for daily exercise that helps develop their muscles and keep their muscles strong.
And I'm assuming this would be getting promoted across all of the medical centres in the area.
So I'm not sure how they're promoting it, but I imagine it will get busy because the people who had experienced and were doing it, they were just so happy and couldn't talk very highly of it. So
yeah, absolutely.
And Belgrave, you don't realise the things. I was talking to their CEO. He was talking about all the programs they're running and how they just bought Jimbaroo and how they're into clothing now and all these other things. But the amount of programs he runs and gives away for nothing. They've got a very high social conscience and do a lot of good things that you don't really hear about for nothing, and spend a lot of money helping organisations. So it was quite a positive thing.
Hey, and that's probably a great lead into what we want to talk about today, which is the 2041 community vision. I had a look at it on the website. What struck me most, very socially conscious document, and it looked to me, it felt like it was trying to address things at a micro level, seeing individuals and in individual groups rather than at the macro level of a full community, so that it could start to look at solutions, tailored solutions almost for the various needs within the community. Would that be a fair comment?
It would be. Agree. It is. It's like some people say, we're a business, we should be more business-like, we need to be efficient. But we're also as you said, we're a social enterprise, basically, that supports people. And as Alison knows, when people get in trouble or something goes wrong in their life, they don't go to state or federal politicians. They come to their local council for support. And organisations, as we've seen during the week and all the time, when an organisation gets into trouble, they don't go state or federal. They come to their council and they rely on their council to help them. And we do a lot of that work. And we're the last resort for a lot of people. And some of the programs we run, people aren't aware of them, but they do so much good. And we're basically we're not there to make money. We're there to provide services. Which disappointed me a lot, actually, in that last community satisfaction survey. One of the questions that was asked was, what would you rather see, a reduction in services or an increase in your rates? And what's been happening over the last few years, there's been a steadily increase in the people saying, I'll reduce the services, don't increase our rate. And that's a bit of a reflection of the cost of living problem. But it's a bit of a worry for councils because, we're under so much pressure to support so many groups, and rightly so. And people are saying, well, no, don't increase our rates. We'd rather you reduce your services, which is incredibly difficult to do.
And it's not only is it difficult to do now, we have a there's a population increase that's been worked out in Banyule, 1,000 people every year. 1,000 people every year, 1,000 people every year. All of them are going to need their local council at some point. So just in Banyule, we're looking at about 1,000 people every year. As stated in the community vision, we've got about 131,000, just over 131,000 at the moment. That's increasing over the next 20 years, up to 2041. They're going to need their local council. So if we're reducing services now and for the next couple of years, what are those residents how are we going to help them in 10 years' time and 20 years' time?
And the way, sorry, Carl, when we looked at this vision, like it was only 2021 when we created this vision, and how much things have changed since then, because one of the priorities was the well-built city. And yet we've seen, after COVID, property prices were going to drop 20%, which certainly didn't happen. Property prices, as Alison would know, are now virtually recovered to what they were, and in some places exceeded what they were prior to the pandemic. But then if you read the housing plan and the policy strategy from the state and the housing crisis we've got now, to meet to accommodate the people we have now plus the expected increase, we're going to have to build 850 dwellings every week until 2040.
Which we don't have the materials or the resources.
And we don't have the materials, and that's why infrastructure, and we have the inflation issue. And they're saying, well, it's because governments are building too many projects and they're sucking up all the resources, all the workers, all the resources into these big builds. And even though they have these targets, even though the need is certainly there, to try and get the resources, the workforce to meet that 850 houses a week.
Mm-hmm.
And we're nowhere near that now, And that's why the state government is part, and you know what, our well-built city was well planned in the sustainable living place. The state government is saying, well, the councils are the problem. They're not, haven't been approving enough development. So we're going to take the powers off them and approve more development. But the issue is that it's a commercial decision. And I'm in Greensboro around. I keep thinking about that site right down the end of Greensboro Walk, which is probably 50 metres from here. There was a house knocked down 5 or 6 years ago. There's been 3 approved planning permits for that site, which council's approved. None of them have been built for commercial reasons. So to say it's council's problem that you're not approving enough things is so totally wrong. And then we could look at some of the major sites we've got across Melbourne. Arden precinct in North Melbourne, that's moved to some degree, but it hasn't really progressed as it should have.
Yep.
Fisherman's Bend. Remember the plans for Fisherman's Bend?
Mm-hmm.
What's happened at Fisherman's Bend?
Yeah.
Nothing. Absolutely. It's a major redevelopment site right on the doorstep of the city, and nothing's happened because the infrastructure and the big problem there is the transport links into the city just don't exist.
Yeah.
And they've been after a tram. The whole thing was based around this new tram that were going to service. They were going to build the Fisherman's Bend. It just simply hasn't happened. So, yeah, there's lots of issues, and they've changed the planning rules, and now that basically you can build a granny flat in any backyard, which will help a bit. But then, and it's interesting. Actually, Wyndham Council today come out and have tried to change their whole planning scheme. They're saying they're not going to accept individual houses on blocks anymore. They're saying that for too long, developers have come along and actually pick which development goes first. So you end up with, you got the edge of what your city is, then you have 3 or 4 paddocks, and then you have another suburb. And they're saying they're not going to accept that, because the problem with that is you're isolated and you can't even get the services that are around you. You've got to build all the services in that suburb, and that's just not happening.
Well,
and then because there's no buses to provide, there's no trains, all those people then drive everywhere for everything, and that's just killing the livability of those areas. So they're saying that, and as they talked about, and this is it's amazing. If you go to Wyndham Station, next to Wyndham Station, there's got 1,000 car parks, and then next to them, you've got a new Bunnings with another 500 car parks around it. So they're saying, well, why aren't we building the houses next to the station? Why are we building houses 5 kilometres from the station? Which is, a valid question. So if you look, Wyndham have actually announced that they're going to stop that. And the other thing they're doing, which is always amazing, you go out there, you'll see all these new estates, they've all got black roofs. And as you know, black roofs absorb heat. So then they put a bigger air conditioning on the roof to cool the house down. Why do they accept that black roofs are like, and they've virtually got no yards, there's no trees. Wyndham's got the least tree coverage of any local government area in Australia, which just shocked me. So they've locked in now these houses which are hot boxes, no trees to put any shade anywhere, and they're also totally dependent on their cars. And now the petrol prices have gone up there. A lot of those people are in real stress.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to have a look at, I remember back in the 90s, before they built the extension of the rail link from Epping out through to South Morang and there was all those paddocks, all of that development that didn't happen. But then once that rail link finally went in, that corridor has exploded. You've now got Plenty Valley Shopping Centre. You've got industrial estates out there. You've got housing estates out there. And that's been in 20 years less, that it's exploded. So I accept your point there, Tom, that until you put the infrastructure in, you're condemning people to live in hot boxes and drive cars. An interesting thing about what you said with people wanting less services. Sometimes I think those are similar knee-jerk reactions where people probably aren't aware of all of the services that you have to provide because of the people who need them. And well, if it's not touching me, or if I don't even know about it, then hey, get rid of it. Whereas they may not even know how it actually impacts them.
That's correct. That's exactly right. So it just highlights how things have changed just since we put out that, and how the well-built city is, even more pressing of a need now. And it just concerns me how we've got, and as we talked about before, they're already saying that 2023 will be the hottest year ever recorded. We've talked about the bushfire threats we're facing. They also announced today that by 2030, we're going to be we will have doubled the amount of fossil fuels we burn per year than we committed to in the Paris Accord. So we're actually going the wrong way. And what the evidence of that is that, the highest selling car in Australia is still the Toyota Hilux. Many of them are diesels. The size of the cars are getting bigger. The number of people they're carrying is not. And petrol prices are around the $2 mark, and yet we're buying bigger cars.
You know what? I'm just going to actually throw something in there, Tom. I don't know that our cars today are any bigger than those that were being driven around in the 50s.
I think
there were fewer cars. There were a lot fewer cars, let's say, in the 50s and 60s. But I actually reckon that some cars that were being, and I'm talking worldwide, I'm not just talking Australia or Banyule, there are cars that were long. They're really long cars and they're wide.
You're talking about the Coupe de Villes and things like that.
Chevy.
Yeah. So, they were being driven around, and I actually think they've gradually become smaller compared with 50, 60, 70 years ago.
But at least you could see over them. These things, like those Rams, they're 3 tons. They're little trucks.
No, it's okay. They're probably bigger than that, Tom. But yeah, I got it.
and they're so much higher.
Yeah, they are.
And your Chevys and all that, they were lower.
Yeah.
They were lower, sleeker. But you remember 15 years ago, everyone was buying those smart cars. Now you never see small cars have gone out. We now and the people that set the standards are talking about increasing the standard for a parking spot to make them wider and longer to accommodate the bigger vehicles. And you think, well, that just means that there'll be less car parking spots. You see some of those Rams in commercial parking spots. They don't fit into the spots anymore.
Yes.
They're just, and the other problem with them is that not only are they that big and they're that heavy on fuel, many of them are diesel, and we understand that the implications of burning diesel and the quality of the air and the impacts that have on people's lungs. But they're designed for if they strike anything, they push it underneath the car to save damaging the car. So you have these enormous vehicles that are very heavy and high, and they're designed if they hit a pedestrian, the pedestrian goes underneath. And it's just frightening to think they're driving around in our cities. And the Toyota Hilux is the highest selling Toyota. The Ford Ranger is the highest selling Ford. The Mitsubishi, whatever it's called, is so every car company, the highest selling car is their 4-wheel drive, 4-door ute option.
Yeah.
Not even a ute anymore. It's actually an SUV truck hybrid.
Correct. Correct. And we're using them to take the kids to school. We're using them to do our shopping, and they're 3-ton trucks.
Yeah.
It's a crazy world.
We could have a really long discussion about global car platforms and how they're now only making 3 types of cars. You have your small, compact or coupe. You have a truck, and the other thing you may have is some SUV.
Yep.
And that's it. That's all car makers want to make.
Yeah, panel vans are gone.
Yep. Look at the decrease in light commercial trucks because they've been replaced by the Dodge Rams and that.
Yeah, the Dodge Rams, they're big cars, aren't they?
They are huge. Yes.
Yeah.
And the other thing is people don't feel safe driving around in a small car because you have these enormous vehicles driving around everywhere.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's cyclical. Yeah.
But the truth is, anyone that's not in a vehicle, pedestrians and cyclists, are far less safe because of the impact of these cars, and you know that the smaller cars are actually safer because they have the crumple zones to absorb the impact of anything. These bigger cars don't have those crumple zones. They're truck chassis. So people they're not as safe as they think because they get shaken so badly, but the impact they have on everyone around them is so much greater. And the fuel efficiency is just not there. And yet petrol's $2 a litre. So it's just, and you think the average car, probably 15 to 16 years, so for the next 15 or 16 years, these newer vehicles that are coming on the road now will still be driving around. When as Alison said, another 1,000 people every year in Banyule, we're not building more roads, and yet we're getting more people and bigger vehicles.
So we've got about 165,000 people expected to be living in Banyule by the end of 2041, at the end of our current community vision, and they need to all live somewhere, and we're all in the same space. As Tom said, we are not getting bigger. We have to manage this space, and that's where we have our subdivisions. We have to use the land that we have.
Land is finite, and I think
we don't have it anymore.
The thing is, the document might say 2021 to 41, but I know that the planning went into that, even from as early as 2013, 15, with some of the things that were looked at, like community housing, social housing in places like Belfield. One of the things that I would actually like to ask you on the document, Tom, you mentioned about the what was the word you used for it? The city?
Wyndham.
No. The document itself talking about the not socially conscious city, but the way it was built. We'll come back to that. The point I'd like to get to is space is finite. What are some of the things that have been happening over the last 5 to 10 years that are actually going to be in line with this, with the road to 2041, with how are we going to house these people? What are we going to do? What are the changes that we've actually made in the way we're going to develop things, or in the types of projects that around housing? What are the things that we're looking at there?
Well, we could look at the example the council's done in the Belfield site with the launch housing, which I don't look at the other, very good. But we just need to. Our problem is that when we do higher density development housing, we don't do it properly, in my mind, because we build these big, tall, thin buildings that have no community interface, no community feel, compared to, and I talk about it, the most beautiful city in the world. I used to think it was until I went to Vienna, where they do 6 stories everywhere.
Where's that?
In Paris.
Right.
Go to Paris. Paris is 6 stories everywhere, but they don't fill up the whole block. They face the street, but in the middle of the block they have a community area which everyone uses. We build higher density housing, but we don't build the community infrastructure to make it a livable place. And you only got to look at the Docklands to realise just how badly we do it. And we build 30-story buildings in the Docklands. You drive into your underground car park, you get out of your car, you get in your lift, you go up to your floor, and that's it. There's no interaction, there's no talking to anybody. There's nowhere for those people in that building to meet and become a community.
Having some friends down there are a couple that have done it, but you're right, mostly it is tall buildings. It's an apartment, and that's all it's used for.
And there's no community infrastructure where people can come together. Whereas in Paris, you go there, they have wide boulevards, and they have markets in the streets. Every Saturday, the wide boulevard becomes a market. They have communal gardens in the middle, and they have these facilities where people can. And the fact that it's 6 stories means that you can open the windows. A lot of the Docklands buildings, they can't open windows because it's just too windy, and they may have a balcony that looks over, but they they can't look down and see what's happening in the street. You have a 6-story building, you can look down, oh, there's something going on down the street, or there's, and they have cafes, all the streets are lined with cafes, and people spend a lot of their time in those cafes talking to their friends. We don't, the Docklands has none of that. They may have a few bars, but there's no places for people to come together and mix and talk and feel and build a community.
Yeah, they're not that common here. Although I will say this, I did notice the building in Bell Street that's currently going up. So we've approved some apartment buildings in Bell Street. So it's Sama Group. Tom, you remember Sama Group buildings? Yep. Those buildings, yep, they're apartments. They're actually good size apartments. And yes, some of them do have their own balconies, which by the way are huge. And then there's also an internal communal space. So there's an internal kitchen with a living space which leads out into a really big balcony. So there's that in that particular apartment building. And there's also an outside garden. Now, it isn't, as Tom says, right in the middle. So we don't have like a donut-shaped building with a community garden in the middle. The community garden is actually on the north side of the building. So the building tends to wrap around like a C shape, overlooking. So many of the apartments on that side, on the north side of the building, of the apartments actually can look down into the beautiful gardens that have been planted, and can see that there are spaces to sit and enjoy each other's company, or go for a walk around, or get some air. So yes, that's more in line with what should be being built if we're looking at apartment buildings.
So that's a fair comment, but something like that would take still a reasonable parcel of land, which last time I looked in Banyule, there's not that many areas where we have those parcels of lands, unless someone is willing to buy quite a number of existing housings and knock them down to create that sort of a dwelling.
It comes back to the zoning of the land. Okay, so the zoning is set by the state. State sets the zoning of lands, and if there's we talk about activity centres and developing near activity centres so that they're closer to public transport and other facilities. That's where, you know, the older properties that were built in the 40s, 50s, 60s that are close to a station or close to a hub, a shopping hub, etc. They're the blocks, if you like, that are being looked at as the development sites for these types of buildings, so long as the zoning allows for it.
Which then brings us back to the comment that Tom had earlier, with that zoning now being taken over by state, or trying to be taken over by state. Where does that local insight come from then?
Exactly.
And the trouble is those ones on Bell Street, like, they take up the block. But then we've got the other side of the coin, where in lots of areas in Rosanna, every single house that was on a reasonable sized block gets knocked down. They build 3 2-story or big houses with a driveway down one side. There's this concept of inclusive zoning where you encourage because it happens, this house this week, next one, that one. So slowly over time, we're replacing single houses on large blocks with 3 big houses, but there's no community space. There's no room for planting of anything. Is that, or are we better off saying, well, 2 or 3 houses come together, you can build an apartment block, 4 or 5 stories, but then you need to have a garden space. You need to have a communal space. And the Commons is that one that they've built over in Brunswick. If you go there, they have a shared laundry. It's on the roof. You have a shared clothesline. It's on the roof. You have a barbecue area on the roof. I think it's 5 or 6 stories. But if you want to do your washing, you have to go to the roof. Whereas these houses, they all have their own washing machine. They all have their own laundry. They all have their small clothesline out the back. There's no room for anything else. Are you better off building these, saying to people, well, 2 or 3 houses come together, build a 4 or 5 story apartment block, but you must have a communal area. We're just filling the places up with concrete. We've all these big houses, they're all got al fresco area out the back. The backyard is tiny and it's filled with a clothesline. And then we have a concrete driveway running down one side. Like it's not good. And there's no communal space. And we're better off building apartments style that, you know, 4 or 5 stories, but making sure there's part of that trade-off. Yes, you need a decent communal area. You need all these other things that go with people living with each other, because it's very isolating the way we're doing it.
It's interesting because you could argue that the developer's looking at it going, well, for every building I put there, I get an X amount of money.
Yes.
Your view is put quality buildings there, but then they may actually go, well, okay, but I'm going to ask more for the building then.
Well, no, you don't, because if you look at the common, and this is every dwelling we build. So we mandate that if you build a 3-bedroom house, you must have 2 car parking spots.
Mm-hmm.
How much are you paying for those 2 parking spots? You've got a double garage. Every house we build, we've got a double garage. How much space is that taking up on the block? And it's a lot. Are we better off saying, okay, let's go and build 3 apartment blocks closer to the station? And I know it's controversial, but the Commons has got no car parking spots. And if you build an apartment block, say for instance your apartment's 50,000, and you build an underground car parking spot, which most of them have got, it's 50 grand per spot. That's what it costs to build them.
Yeah.
Are you better off saying, okay, you can move in here, it'll be $50,000 cheaper than the apartment next door, but you won't get an apartment block. And Greensboro is the classic. You know, could you live in Greensboro without having a car? Yes, you possibly could. And yes, there will be occasions where you need a car. Each one of these apartment blocks has belongs to the apartment block, and you can rent it quite cheaply. And there's a car, GoGet.
Go car, yeah.
GoGet will give you a car in your building. They'll manage it. You book it, you use it, and it's quite cheap. But no, we say everyone's got to have 2 car parking spots. Part of the changes the government are making, that there used to be this minimum parking requirement. So if you build a 3-bedroom house, you've got to have 2 car parking spots. If you build 2 bedrooms, you only need 1. They're saying, okay, we're going to go away from a minimum parking requirement to a maximum parking requirement. And this is where people get upset, and I can understand why they do get upset, because they think, oh, if you don't build enough car parking associated with how many people are going to have cars, they're all going to park in the streets. And we council, and then you put in parking restrictions. People with these buildings don't get them, but they're not. We actually, people always say when you look at these developments, it's going to cause more congestion, and you're not having enough parking. And I always think, well, if you add more parking, you're just going to get more cars, and then you're going to get more congestion. So as Alison said, as our population increases, we can't just continue to business as usual. Everyone's going to drive their car, and we're going to accommodate that, because it's just not going to work.
The challenge there is even bigger, though, than government, any level of government legislation or ideas or policies. What's the great Australian dream?
Yeah,
well, and that's I think that's something that needs to evolve as well in our own mindsets, not just from what you've explained, but also people, I think, may need to get past this whole I've got to own my own home as part of the great Australian dream.
Absolutely.
It could be simply seen as you will own a portion of your home, you are wealth building, but eventually you'll pay the bank back. If you had a $2 million house on sale and you owe the bank $1 million, they get $1 million, you get $1 million. There's some wealth building, but it's not really owning a home.
And this is exactly it. It's how do we think differently from what we've been doing for the last however many decades. So life is different now compared with post-war development. So in the 40s, it was very different from now. It was, build your home. And who was building the homes back in the 40s? It was people who owned them. You actually bought your land, and then you had the skill and the ability to build your home, and your family members joined in and you built your home. And that doesn't happen now. It's a very different headspace. So we're still holding on to the great Australian dream. And that is, yeah, you own your own home, or you at least buy one and have a mortgage for most of your life, and you have at least one car. And when the kids come along, well, they need a car now. We weren't talking about, when I was growing up in the 70s, your parents didn't go and buy you a car, whereas it's a lot more common for that to happen now because of the wealth that we have. So it's all relative. And now it's a case of, is the great Australian dream still valuable? Is it still practical? How is it impacting the way we're going to live over the next 40, 50 years? And I'm going to go beyond the Banyule 41 vision, sorry. It's into the next generations. And what I hear is, I don't know how my young person, my son, my daughter, whom I don't know how they're going to own their own home. There's this headspace in parents' heads who are our generations now saying, I don't know how my kids are going to own their own home. And you know what? They may not. They may not. They may actually, it might be an apartment that they buy. It might be that they don't. It might be that they do what so many people in European countries do, and other parts of the world, which is actually rent. It's the wealthiest few who own the buildings, and the majority of residents rent.
Well, and also over there you get what they call generational housing. 2 or 3 generations in the same building. Look, we could go on this part, the housing, for a while. There are a couple of other areas I really want to touch on with 2041. One that really struck me was the view around safety and inclusiveness, and I love this term, a connected community, regardless of age, ethnicity, or any other demographic you can think of. It was actually looking more at how do we connect the community. Can you explain what your vision actually meant by this, and what was the previous history that drove that thinking?
Do you want to start on that one, Alice?
I can start. So the idea of connected community, look, people make the world go round, regardless of anything else. Everything comes from people. Everything comes from a human idea. And humans create culture. And if the last 3 to 4 years is anything to go by, isolation has been so detrimental to us. Humans are a group. We're a group. We're a species that sticks together. We are a group. We work in packs, groups, communities, suburbs, whatever you want to call it. This is how we are as humans. And the more people who, look at voting, look at products, the more people who choose X, Y, and Z means that's communities that choose X, Y, Z to the detriment of something else. And so something else disappears. And we've got more people wanting X, Y, Z. And that's what joins us together. We've got something in common. That it just comes back to how humans function. And it's certainly even more so now is keeping people together, or providing services that encourage people to connect, find something in common, have that service available for them, whether it's something through a neighbourhood house, for example, courses in neighbourhood houses, or events that we provide. Like we have when every month there's an art exhibition, often at Ilch. Okay, there's an art exhibition. We present people in our community create artwork. They're doing something they love, and they want to share it with others. And there are so many people in our community who love that and want to be part of that sharing. And they want to come to this event. They want to come to the building. They want to come and meet other people in their community. They want to come and meet their neighbours. They want to come and meet their counsellors. They want to get out from their homes and be involved. So we're just creating opportunities for so many people to get together and meet and enjoy each other's company and have a conversation and learn from each other and contribute to each other's lives.
So
and we've seen that again and again and again, and people love it, and they tell us they love it.
So what I'm hearing there is one of the probably biggest lessons we learnt during COVID was we've got to bring people together to make that thriving community. Isolating them almost, I won't say destroys a community, but really breaks apart the fabric.
Mm.
And the problem is it's getting harder. You know, COVID was incredibly difficult, but then some of the traditional organisations that did bring communities together have diminished to some degree. Again, a lot of the churches, attendance at churches has fallen right off, and yet they were community centres where people, you know, kids came in the whole life there. And I know at St Martin's there was a very strong community there, and it was multi-generational, and it's got very difficult to continue. And a lot of those churches are really trying to get people to come back, but trying to get young people to come back. But COVID did also highlight how important it all is. And you go to the youth festival, which I missed this year because I was away, but even the young people really appreciate the opportunity to come together and experience and enjoy each other's company.
Mm.
And it's lovely to see. But then the intergenerational learnings, and you can think about the First Nations people, how they honour their elders. We don't, as a community, we don't do that as well. But then you watch old age home for teenagers, and you realise the benefit of young people mixing with older people, and certainly the benefit for older people enjoying the company and the lives of younger people. So as a council, trying to get that balance right. How do we provide services and opportunities for young people to come together, other people to come together who are incredibly busy, older people to come together, and the senior citizens week the other week, when the function we had at the town hall was just absolutely unbelievable. And if you look at the results of, I think it was 68% of the people said that they thought it was excellent, and 27% said it was very good. It was something like 89% of people said it was either very excellent or very good. But they're expensive to run. But you know, we need to continue to those sorts of things. But we also need to get younger people there as well. And on Melican Reserve, I think Melican Festival's coming up on the weekend. It is a very fantastic, multi-generational community event at Melican Park, which I think Melican is one of the places I think council can be quite pleased with, because when I first got on council, Melican Reserve was a little small car park, little play area. Basically, people didn't go there after dark because it was not safe to go there after dark. Now it booms all day long. There's barbecue areas there. We had to change. There used to be a rule that you weren't allowed to drink alcohol in Melican Reserve for a very good reason. We've had to change that because people come along and have picnics now and have a little glass of wine with it. And we had to change the sign. So I think Melican Reserve festival is a highlight of this council. But then we need to do so much more. And McLeod Village this weekend is having a car show, another great event. So council, but we need to build that into everyday life. I think some of the pop-up restaurants have been very, very successful, but we need to continue that as well. But it is incredibly difficult as some of the other organisations diminish. Council needs to step up because we need to provide opportunities for people to build community, and it's difficult.
Well, probably one of the things that I've seen in the last 3-4 years is that we're now starting to get some cafes that are open later that have also got a wine facility and live music.
Yes.
Something that I felt had dropped out of this city, this community, with the advent of poker machines and things like that. A lot of the local clubs had gone away from providing entertainment, and now we're seeing these small bars, cafes opening up, which probably brings me to the last point I wanted to talk about. Was we know that the economy in the state of Victoria is currently in a very tight situation, And more it's looking like small to medium business growth is actually falling back to the LGAs to facilitate or take the lead on. I guess the question I have is, what are some of the things that would be in your minds ways to encourage business growth and employment within the Banyule City for small to medium businesses?
I'm sorry, I better leave that one to Alison because I have to go. I'm afraid I have to go somewhere else. But yeah, that is a trick, because if you provide local jobs, you provide local employment. I think we need to work more with La Trobe University. I think that's a big opportunity for us. I know it's not in Banyule, but they're expanding into agribusiness. We have the West Heidelberg Industrial Estate right next door. They're doing all this work to try and develop new businesses and new ways of growing things, new technology around food. And then hopefully that will spill over into the West Heidelberg, where they'll be able to commercialise some of the ideas they're coming up with La Trobe University. I think that's a big opportunity we have to look for. But I need to move on, I'm sorry. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you for your time there, Tom.
I'll listen to the rest of it when I get home tonight. But yeah, thanks, Carl. Thanks. I'm sorry I have to.
That's okay. Thank you so much for being here, Tom. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thanks. Cheers, mate.
Bye.
So, Alison, would you like to expand on some of the things that Tom was just talking about there?
I can do that. Yeah. So look, Tom's just referred to the traders. So there's an event in McLeod this Sunday, and the following Sunday, the 19th, the same event is happening at Montmorency. Our traders associations, we have a great connection. Our economic development team has a really close connection with our traders association. So they're within some of the shopping precincts around Banyule, and our officers work together with the traders. So there is a person or an organisation leading the traders group, and meets with the traders regularly, and then council officers come on board as well. So there's a connection. I've been invited on a couple of occasions to the Montmorency Traders Association meetings. Look, a councillor doesn't need to go; they're not normally invited. But I'm pretty blessed, and so Councillor Tom is the same. He's very blessed. It's the same Traders Association that works with Montmorency and McLeod, and we appreciate the work that they do. And that allows for activities like the car shows that are happening over the next couple of weekends, which is part of the traders' budget. And this is all the small businesses that are within those precincts, those shopping precincts or those hubs, whatever you'd like to call them. And so they've got a budget, but then council also supports by providing a special scheme. So council actually contributes funding to their budgets, and that allows for those traders associations to hold events that are fun for the community to participate in, and brings people so that those people come and watch the event, participate in the event, but also go, oh, I might go and have a coffee here, or oh, there's a nice clothes shop there, I might go there, or oh, we'll get some takeaway, or whatever it is, so that encourages others outside the area to come, and people who live in the area invite family, friends. I know, we'll just go down and meet down the road here and we'll have lunch, etc. So that's one thing that we do. We support our traders associations, which then encourages growth in small business, which then encourages employment opportunities.
So really, there's a bit of a two-pronged strategy there. You've talked about the retail side, and then Tom's looked at the industry side with La Trobe and how they could potentially create new businesses.
Yeah. See, what you need to know also with, say, the example given is La Trobe. Yes, it's in Darebin, but I've got to tell you, Banyule associates very well with La Trobe. We are always looking at ways to connect with La Trobe University and how we can work with them. So they're always on our radar. I actually think my argument is that La Trobe should be a part of Banyule. That's
Well,
my
Heidelberg West Business Park is in Banyule, so
Heidelberg West, so that's at the other end of Banyule, and then we've got Latrobe at another end. So, but the thing is, I learnt recently from one of our senior planners, that's never going to happen. Probably it's not going to happen. And it's not going to happen because university or tertiary institutes are actually under federal legislation, not state or local. So,
but it's about building partnerships.
Building partnerships. So this is it. This is the thing. It's about building partnerships with organisations in any industry that can contribute to communities, can contribute to the economy, and therefore to small business, which allows the growth of small business and therefore opportunities for employment. Now, one of the programs that was piloted, I think the first program actually was conducted in 2020. So that was the year I was mayor. Our inclusive employment program. Now, that is the brainchild of, do you know what? It actually came from Councillor Rick, and it came from a conversation that one of his residents in Bundoora had with him. Mm-hmm. And the conversation went, Rick, my child who's disabled, I believe it was, my child is disabled. I just want them to be able to get a job. It's like, okay, so you're coming to me as your ward councillor, asking me to help you, help your child get a job. How do I do that? What do I do? So he's gone to our offices and there's been just this groundswell and lots of conversation of how do we make that happen? And that's something that was created just from this conversation, and we're now into, I think it's the 5th. We're actually, I think it recently closed, or it's about to close, any applications for next year's inclusive employment program opportunity. It goes for about 6 months, and in that opportunity, there does need to be demonstration by the participant or the applicant that they have made every effort to apply for jobs over whatever time. And look, one example that, I was speaking with her in a meeting with our CEO earlier today. She said one Montmorency resident who has a disability applied for over 400 jobs and just didn't even get one interview. And when they applied for this program, this inclusive employment program, and was given the opportunity to participate in it, they participated in it for the 6 months. They graduated from it. They were given 12 months worth of employment at Banyule Council. So not only did that resident receive a job or applied and worked towards a job, they also contributed to our officers' work lives as well. And after that 12 months, they actually applied for a job outside council, got it. They now work full time, and they've just recently been able to create a deposit big enough to buy their first home.
Good.
So that inclusive employment program allows for that, and it came from the brainchild of, a conversation with one of our fellow councillors. So that's something that we're doing in Banyule. We do it every year, and there are 4 councils now locally that actually are taken on board this program, and they're working it through their own councils.
I would also, probably I'm making an assumption here, but with the finishing off of the Greensboro Rail project, the freeing up of Para Road and the amount of land that will be available then, because it's been used for housing the vehicles and all that to work on the state government project and other areas down there, and potentially the ability to maybe refresh that area could be another opportunity.
Yeah, look, at the moment there is, Para Road's still a work in progress. So the example you're giving us, Para Road, still a work in progress. The trail, so the pedestrian cycling trail, is just sort of starting. So we're still got the rail duplication. That's done. Greensborough Station's completed. Montmorency Station's completed. There's still working on the trail. So the the cycling and pedestrian trail is still a project that's being worked on in the area. So there is space there. So there's still a little bit of a construction site kind of feel, a lot less than it was, but it's still there. So there's the space that the state government is using on the side, or borrowing on the side for their materials and their equipment, is actually council land. It's not private land. It's not private land. It's actually council land. Okay. So those pieces of land are going to be reinstated as they were prior to the state using them for their project. So we think of E.J. Andrews Reserve in Bry Hill at the moment. That's a really good example there of a whole lot of private dwellings, properties, houses close to or encircling a park with a playground. And unfortunately, the residents who live there are actually looking at, construction storage materials for the benefit of the rail duplication, and they're going to be doing that for a little bit longer because the cycling and pedestrian trail is going to be under construction shortly. So that will be reinstated as a grassy area with a park. And now we also have residents who say, well, look, can we contribute to the planting? Can we plant some trees? Can we plant some gardens? Can we do that as well? Even though it's not your land or our land, we'd like to be able to contribute because we look onto this. We look at this, we see this every day. We would like to help make it beautiful.
They don't want to look at an eyesore.
Well, there's that, because they're sick of doing that too. Yeah, so there's that. So they actually are inspired to contribute to their homes, even though the land doesn't belong to them. Yep. But it's a visual. If we also take Petrie Park, there's a section of Petrie Park that's been taken over holding equipment by the state government. Look, we've had some of our some of our residents who use the local area. So we've got Monty Bowling Club there. We've got the Scout Hall, as you know, and the Pigeon Club. We have people who go there and the RSL every single day. They're there every day. They look at this all the time and they go, that'd be great if that was something else. Can we make that something else? So there's inspiration there from our community. Now, whatever the space was, it'll be reinstated as the same type of use after the state has finished the project.
So we just need to hurry them on a little.
Yeah.
We'll leave that there.
I'll just park that there.
We'll park that, put a pin in it. Yeah.
So look, there's local government councils can create things like an inclusive employment program and encourage more people to come into the area, and they are with the construction. So, we go back to, we've got 165,000 people expected to be living in Banyule by 2041. So people are coming. They're already coming just by population growth and distance from the city. They're coming. This is what humans do. So our population is increasing. It will mean just by more people being here, more services will be created, businesses will be created, businesses will grow. There will be more employment opportunities just by virtue of those popular businesses continuing to run, needing more people to help serve people.
Yep.
So, and while certain industries, change, there are some jobs that won't exist in 20 years' time. There are jobs that exist now that didn't exist in 20 years ago, just through human need. It all comes back to humans. We create our own worlds. So I'd like to think that that's answered your question. So to a point, council can create jobs.
Yep. Stimulate.
It just comes back to the number of people creating a space that people love to come to and want to live and can see themselves living. And because of that increase in population, that allows for more people to contribute ideas and want more things and need more things. And this is where, coming right back to one of the first comments that Councillor Tom made, was people were asked, would you like a rate reduction, or, you know, you're happy for a reduction in services, what would you like? And most people said a reduction in services. Once you start reducing services, you start reducing the quality of life for all residents in that community, no matter how big or small that community is. You take away a service and people will go somewhere else, or they will not function as well as they possibly could because they don't have that service.
Yeah. Yes, that's the balance you've got to strike.
Yeah. So the more people who use a service, it's like, well, no, we can't discontinue that service. No. That's just not an option, because too many people use it. And as you said, you know, out of sight, out of mind, that's not okay.
No. That's
not okay at all. You can't be out of sight, out of mind. And as residents, we're not going to use every single service. We're just not, because of whatever age we are, or skill set we have, or mental capacity we have. We're not going to use every single service. But as community leaders, we need to be aware. We want to connect with as many people as possible, so we provide as many services as we can. And there are those that are needed more than others.
Well, on that note, Alison, I think we might wind up today's podcast. I'd like to thank you for your time, and Tom while he was here, on providing insights. And I know we sort of went a little bit maybe off the vision itself and talked about external forces and factors, but I think it was enlightening.
What has to be understood is that local government is not the be-all and end-all of what's possible. Unfortunately, there are limitations and there are restrictions that are imposed. Just like on state, there are federal limitations and restrictions imposed, and it is incredibly frustrating. And I know that residents just want to hear, yes, you can get this, yes, you can get that, yes, we'll do that for you. And in many, many cases, the answer is yes. However, there are limitations, and we're in positions where we are required to respect the limitations, but we keep them as few as possible. Yeah. And we could have gone on about planning. Let me tell you, on and on about planning.
Probably should have made that a podcast on its own. Hey,
that's a podcast for another time.
Absolutely. Well, look, on that note, I'd like to thank everybody who's been listening to this podcast. We hope that you'll join us for next month's Champion Chat, which will be our holiday Champion Chat podcast, where we'll be looking at local community events that will be happening over the December-January period. Yeah. Thank you all, and look forward to seeing you all then. Thank you, Alison.
Thank you, Carl. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.